A pleading suspect dies in the custody of police. And this one takes place. So this is not the first or second time we've heard this, but this happened in Los Angeles. And the "I can't breathe," which is what he said, was the same words we heard echoed by Eric Gardner in New York, who was put into an illegal chokehold, which tells you this thing is rampant. This level of police militarization and police brutality against black and brown young people is rampant. But in this particular story, this is a Los Angeles police officer. He handcuffs Mr. Azucena, if I believe is how you pronounce it. Azucena, excuse me. And he said, "I can't breathe. I have asthma. I have asthma." And the police officer said, "You can breathe just fine," one of the sergeants told him. "You can talk, so you can breathe." Well, later on, that particular suspect could not walk or stand. By the time the officers brought him to the Los Angeles Police Department for booking, and they put him in his cell, they left him face on the floor. He was unconscious. And when the paramedics arrived shortly after, his heart had stopped beating. After the time, and this was all put out, and this was in the LA Times. After a Times article last year on the circumstances surrounding Acuñaz's death, the reports offered new details into the man's desperate and futile attempts to convince officers that his lungs were suffocating, to where the coroner's office determined that he died of an asthma attack. Listen, this instance, and I don't think we can look at any of these instances in a vacuum. Whether we're talking about this suspect in Los Angeles, Eric Gardner in New York, Staten Island, or we're talking about Michael Brown in Ferguson, all of these cases speak to a larger, broader problem that we have in the United States of America, right? The relationship between black and brown youth and black and brown men and the police department. Right, and we've got to really start to have some creative and real conversations with how we fix those relationships if we ever plan on getting it right, America. Because if we don't, I'm telling you, we're going to lose a whole generation of people. We're going to lose a whole generation of people who do not believe law enforcement is enforcing laws for them. They're just enforcing laws against them. Right, and that can only change if and when we decide to have a conversation, a real one. No malarkey, no BS, no he say, she say, none of that. Let's have a real conversation, right, where people acknowledge where they are. And we say to the police department, you can't go around brutalizing young African-American men. And there has to be a give and take. We got to talk about what's happening in our own community. We're right back on the Fowler Show after this break.